After Earth is a 2013 American science fiction post-apocalyptic action-adventure film co-produced and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who co-wrote the script with Gary Whitta. The film was loosely based on an original story idea by Will Smith about a father and son trip in the wilderness before it was eventually reworked into a sci-fi setting, taking place 1,000 years in the future, where humans evacuated Earth to another planet due to a massive environmental catastrophe. It is the second film after The Pursuit of Happiness, 2006, that stars real-life father and son Will and Jaden Smith. Will Smith, his wife Jada Pinkett Smith, his brother-in-law Caleb Pinkett, and business partner James Lasseter also produced the film via their company Overbrook Entertainment, while Columbia Pictures distributed the film. The film was co-produced by John Rusk, who was also the first assistant director on this film as well as on many of Shyamalan's other films. 4. The film follows father and son, Cypher and Katai Rage, who find themselves crash-landing on the abandoned Earth. When Cypher gets injured from the crash, Katai must travel across the wild environment in search of a backup beacon to fire a distress signal, while having to defend himself from the highly evolved animals, as well as an extraterrestrial creature that detects its prey by smelling fear. The film was released in IMAX on May 31, 2013. Upon release, After Earth was panned by film critics, who targeted the story, visuals, performances of Will and Jaden Smith, and Shyamalan's direction. It made $243.8 million at the box office against a budget of $130 million.
Plot.
In the future, on a human-populated space colony, Nova Prime, the Skrull extraterrestrial race attempts to take it over with creatures called Ursas, which hunt by sensing fear. Ranger Corps, a global peacekeeping organization, defeats them with a fear-suppressing technique called ghosting, but not before an Ursa kills Senshi, the daughter of their leader Cypher Rage. Blaming himself for his sister's death, Senshi's 13-year-old brother Katai trains to become a ranger like Cypher, but is rejected. Katai's mother Faya convinces Cypher to take Katai on his last voyage before retirement. During flight, their spaceship is caught in an asteroid shower, causing them to crash land on Earth, which humans had evacuated 1,000 years earlier due to an environmental cataclysm. The two survive, but Cypher's legs are broken, and the main beacon for firing a distress signal is damaged. Cypher instructs Katai to locate the tail section of the ship, which broke off on entry to the atmosphere. Inside is the backup beacon, which they can use to signal Nova Prime. Cypher gives Katai his weaponized cutlass, a wrist communicator, and 6 capsules of a fluid that enhances oxygen intake, so he can breathe. Katai leaves to find the tail section, with Cypher guiding him through the communicator. Katai confronts many hazards. Bitten by a paralytic leech after fleeing from a pack of baboon-like monkeys, he self-medicates but damages 2 of his capsules. After awakening, Katai takes shelter just as the thermal shift arrives, where Cypher tells him a story about how he conceived ghosting to kill the Ursas. Katai reaches a cliffside waterfall, and Cypher learns about the broken capsules. Knowing that the only way to continue with 2 capsules would be to skydive, Cypher orders Katai to abort the mission, but Katai, believing that his father sees him as a disappointment, refuses to comply after blaming Cypher's absence at home for Senshi's death. Katai is captured by a large condor, and his communicator is damaged. In her nest, Katai fails to defend her chicks against large panthers before escaping to a river, where he drifts on a raft and a thermal shift nearly freezes him to death. The condor, who had been following him, shelters Katai, sacrificing her life. Katai reaches the tail section and tries to activate the emergency beacon, but the atmosphere blocks the signal. Katai learns that the ship's Ursa has escaped and killed the rest of the crew. While he climbs up the volcano where he hopes to activate the beacon, the Ursa attacks him, but Katai kills it using the ghost technique he learned from Cypher. After activating the beacon, he and Cypher are sent back to Nova Prime via a rescue team.
Cast.
Jaden Smith as Katai Rage. Sincere L. Bob as 3-year-old Katai. Jaden Martin as 9-year-old Katai. Will Smith as Cypher Rage. Sophie Okonedo as Faya Rage. Zoe Kravitz as Senshi Rage. Glenn Morshower as Commander Velan. Christopher Hivju as Security Chief. Sacha Dhawan as Hesper pilot, Chris Gere as Hesper navigator, Diego Klattenhoff as veteran ranger, David Denman as Private McQuarrie, Lincoln Lewis as Bo, running cadet, Shiva Prabhukumar as training cadet, Isabel Furman as Raina, uncredited.
Production.
Will Smith conceived the story for the film when he was watching the television show called I Shouldn't Be Alive with his brother-in-law Khalid Pinkett, who also served as one of the film's producers. 5. It was originally not a science fiction story, but about a father and son crashing their car in the mountains or some remote region, with the son having to go out and get rescue for his father. Smith then decided to change the setting to 1,000 years in the future, which imposed a higher production budget. The film was also intended to be the first in a trilogy. 6. Smith had his production company Overbrook contact Gary Whitta, who was then known for his script for the Book of Eli, with a simple log line for a film. A father and son crash landed on Earth 1,000 years after it had been abandoned by humankind. Impressed with his idea and excited about the opportunity to work with him, Whitta fleshed out Smith's idea and pitched it to him, subsequently becoming the first employee on the project. A month after the release of The Last Airbender, Smith contacted M. Night Shyamalan on August 6, 2010, to wish him a happy birthday on his 40th birthday and also to persuade him to direct his film along with his son Jaden as the star. 7. Smith and Shyamalan had planned to work on a film before, but it never worked out. Impressed with the entire script, Shyamalan officially made this project, then entitled 1000A. His next directorial effort on October 20, 2010, and quietly shelved his own secret untitled project with Bruce Willis, Bradley Cooper, and Gwyneth Paltrow loosely attached. 8. There was another starring role for an adult male, but sources indicated that Smith would not be taking it on. Sony Pictures Entertainment has a first-look deal with Overbrook, so it was expected to be the studio home for A.E. 8. Shyamalan later suggested the film would feature other members of the Smith family, and that it would not be in 3D, but he had an idea for something kind of technically interesting. 9. In December 2011, Columbia Pictures, a subsidiary of Sony, signed up both Will and Jaden Smith to co-star in the film with Shyamalan directing. Shyamalan, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Gary Whitta, also additionally co-produced the film with Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, Khalid Pinkett, and James Lasseter. Doug Belgrad, president of Columbia Pictures, made the announcement and said, Knight is an outstanding filmmaker who has a tremendous vision for this science fiction adventure story, and we couldn't be more excited to be working again with Jaden after our experiences on The Pursuit of Happiness and The Karate Kid, and added, we're thrilled to have the two of them together on this project. Shyamalan also added,